This is Champagne Problems, where we come together to explore the gray areas of drinking. This is a judgment-free zone where we can all take a look at how we make decisions about our relationship with alcohol. Hello, everybody. We just had a really special interview with our young brother, William Burleson. You're about to hear part one of this conversation. In this first segment, you'll hear about William's first experience with alcohol early in high school, which escalated into a series of mental health struggles and eventual involuntary hospitalization. If you're a parent of a high school-age kid or you are in high school, we hope you will take something away from William's powerful story. As a trigger warning for this episode, we will be discussing suicidal ideation, addiction, pornography, and other sensitive subjects. If you or a loved one are experiencing suicidal thoughts, please do not hesitate to reach out to the new suicide hotline 988. William Burleson, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We are very happy to have you on. We thank you for coming on and telling your story. We are excited to do this, and man, I think this is going to save some lives here. It's going to be very powerful.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. That is the goal. All right, brother, so let's start. Let's start with a little background. Let's let our listeners know who you are, where you're from, that kind of stuff.
I'm from Charlotte, born in Charlotte all my life, Queen City. Went to Charlotte Latin, K through 12.
Boo.
Played lacrosse and basketball in middle school, and then got distracted by things in high school, so I quit those.
Oh, yeah?
Had a great group of friends at Latin the whole time. Shout out to them. They've always been there for me in a really impactful way.
Nice.
Have three sisters. Love them to death. And my parents are the best. Mom and dad always have been on my team, made a very comfortable environment to ask for help when I did go through that bad time. Mm-hmm. It's just been a blessing to be here, and I'm excited to get going.
Let's go to the high school years, man. Let's jump into, let's get into the depth of it. When was your first experience drinking?
So for most of my buddies, it came freshman year. It was stealing some Bud Lights from dad's fridge, crossing your fingers he won't find out.
Yeah.
But for me, it actually came sophomore year. I remember it was very calculated. There was a party, and upperclassmen, a junior or senior, a brother of one of our friends, was going to supply the booze. Just a textbook story. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because everyone had to say the amount they were going to have, because it was calculated of how many cases should we buy Bud Light. So I say, all right, first time drinking, I'm just going to have one.
One beer.
Just one beer.
Yeah.
2 cases.
I'm just going to have one beer, and everyone else was saying 4 and 5. And I was on my high horse saying, I'm just going to have one. So I get to the party, and it was at my girlfriend's house at the time. And I get there, and, I go in a little cooler. I grab the one beer, finish it at rapid speed. I already drank my one beer. What's the deal, guys?
Yeah. What do we do now?
What's the deal? And they're playing beer pong, a classic high school game.
You're not getting any of mine.
Yeah. And so there's leftover beer in the beer pong games after the games are finished for the losing side.
There you go.
So I'm like a nighthawk, rolling around the table with one of my buddies, one of my other friends who just said he just have one. And whenever a beer pong game's in, we'd swoop in and steal the quarter-filled solo cups of Bud Light.
That the balls have been in.
Yeah, that the balls have been in, dropped on the floor, dirty fingers going in there. Disgusting. And we go in and we're watching it like a hawk, and we just do that the whole night. And I am circling the table the whole night. And that's all I remember from that night. That's the textbook. I don't really remember my first time drinking because it ended with me drinking too much.
Not remembering.
Having way more than my one Bud Light I was supposed to have. And that pattern kind of continued for the rest of sophomore year. It was difficult to detect me drinking too much or drinking excessively because all my buddies were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I was just fitting in with the crowd. So sophomore year comes, the margins on upperclassmen buying booze for you are incredibly high. A 24-pack of Bud Light will cost you a good $75. And what are we going to do? What do we get
Come up with it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm in the car. I'm with some of my friends. We need a way to find booze. This is sophomore year. On the latter end, right before COVID. Who looks the oldest? Okay, William looks the oldest. I come up with the magnificent idea. Boys, let's go to Walmart. Let's buy me a pair of scrubs.
Ooh.
So I look like a doctor. So I look like a doctor.
Wow.
Classic.
I mean, I thought it was genius.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I go in, I get these scrubs, I slick my hair back, steal my dad's nice watch, slap that on my wrist, and I'm like, whew, okay. Shoulders up, shoulders down. I walk into the gas station right near my house. Like a stroll, like I've just been on residency for the past 12 hours. I'm like, have the tired limp. It's like, oh, what a long day. And I said a line like that.
Put some blood on your scrubs.
I was like, oh, it's been such a long day. And I go up there, and the guy goes, ID, and I reach into my scrubs pocket and do the, I left it in the emergency.
Oh, no.
I left it in the ER.
In the ER.
This happens every day.
Yeah.
I left my wallet in the ER again. He looks at me, and I swear that guy knew. But he let me have the beer.
Oh.
He let me have it. So I walk out, and you see my friends in the car listening to their Lil Wayne, windows down, and they see me walk out with this stuff, and they're like, yes. And we go back to one of my buddy's house, and it was like 5 of us, and we just rail through this case of Bud Light. And then we go back after that. We walk to the gas station. I put my scrubs back on, and now I'm a drunk doctor.
Yeah.
Long day.
And the guy asked me, like, what do you do at the hospital? Swear to God. I said, yeah, I'm the head of the pediatric unit.
I just came up with it.
I was just saying stuff on the top of my head. And we go back, drink more, and that was a pattern until COVID hit, essentially, was I would dress up in scrubs every weekend, and I'd have my guy at the gas station. I asked him what his hours were in a very nonchalant way.
Yeah.
I was like, when do you work? And I found out when he worked, so whenever he was working, me and my buddies would go, and I'd dress up in the scrubs.
Oh, my God.
And go in my dad's closet and take his watch.
Oh, that's
'Cause
classic.
in my head, the watch just really sealed
Oh,
the
yeah,
deal.
absolutely.
I mean, without it, it was
Absolutely.
nothing.
That Casco.
Put the case up there. Like,
It's like, check that out. And so that was just what we did every weekend. We rotate houses. Okay, we went to my house last week. We're going to go to this friend's house next week. And every time I just go buy the booze and the scrubs. And then COVID hits. And at this time, I saved all of my birthday and Christmas money and put it into the stock market. And I got so lucky, invested in pin gaming in the early days before Barstool bought it, and made too much money on pin gaming.
No way.
Like, I had way too much money for a 15-year-old.
Give me a too much amount.
At
Ballpark
its
it.
peak, I had $18,000 in my stock market account. Like, that's ridiculous. Starting from 500. So at this point,
killing it.
I both have like, wow, I am a businessman of the world. Like I'm
and
not
a doctor.
As Jay-Z said, I'm not a businessman.
I'm a
I'm a businessman. So we go, and I'm on top of the world, and we go, and we're still buying booze, and COVID hits. So I just have unlimited funds and a way to get alcohol that is very convenient and easy. All I have to do is change my outfit. So for COVID, which is the end of sophomore year, I'd just go by myself. But this was only every weekend. I'd only drink on the weekends. That was my thing. I don't have a problem if I only drink on the weekends.
Did you make that like a commitment to yourself?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Because I remember the first time I drank, I was like, wow, I could do that.
Yeah.
This
This here's nice.
This could be a
I
problem.
was like, wait a second, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm only drinking on the weekends. I get myself a 6-pack of Blue Moons. Sophomore year, which is so bizarre.
A couple of lemon slices.
Yeah, right. Yeah. throw the orange in there. And my sister and I, who was home from college, I would put the Blue Moon in this big Yeti cup, and I just pound these Blue Moons, and we watch Naked and Afraid, and that was like our bonding time at night. And that kind of kept going the rest through COVID. And that was just my pattern. I'm gonna get scrubs on. I'm going to go buy booze, and I'm going to drink every weekend. And it was all right at the time.
Did you stay in the scrubs the whole weekend? I would have done. That's what I would have done.
So I actually stayed in the scrubs for the parties because I thought I was really cool.
Yeah,
I was like,
cool.
I was like, look at me pulling off as the
I
head of
would've done that.
pediatrics, right? Yeah, I was like,
Dr. Burleson.
Yeah, Dr.
Paging
Burleson.
Dr. Burleson.
Patrick, I made people call me Dr. Burleson. I'd be like, I was like, that's doctor to you, MD.
If you want one of these blue moons, you got to call me doctor.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And that happens all. That was kind of my COVID pattern, essentially. And the junior year hits. Oh, and I'm selling booze now too.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, yeah, upperclassmen.
As
yeah.
Beer dealer.
No, I'm selling to my friends in my grade because I'm the only one that can get it with the scrubs. Like I'm like, oh, you need a 12-pack? All right, Dr. Burleson will come out and play. Like,
$50.
no problem.
Yeah.
And so that go in the stock market too. So now I have probably $25,000 in the
Oh,
stock
this is
market
great.
with investing and essentially selling alcohol to my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Junior year comes around. There's a fake ID order. We need to get fake IDs. I was the head of that front. It was me and another buddy. We're like, all right, we're going to get all of our friends fake IDs because drinking in the garage isn't fun anymore. We got to go to bars. We got to go to restaurants. We got to go have
graduating.
we got to go to we got to go get some nice margaritas, the pitchers. So we get fake IDs and we get a batch of like 50 kids order these fake IDs, and we are handing these things out at school. We kind of keep going on this. All the fake IDs happen. My funds from selling alcohol to my buddies are gone because now they all have fake IDs. They can buy it on their own. So now I think, okay, I need to gamble because that is my other way of
money.
income.
Yeah,
Quick money.
Them stacks up, boy.
And the first bet I got on this random book from some college guy that I somehow knew. And the first bet I ever made was for $100, and it was plus 400, and it hit.
You're in.
Yeah.
Very similar to the first drinking story. This is
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do this forever.
I should do this always. Well, the kryptonite here is I had enough money to do it always in this weird twisted
That's
way.
what you thought.
Yeah, exactly. In my head, I was like,
Foreshadow.
there is no way I can blow through all the money. Spoiler, I blew through every single penny. And still, my drinking habits, I'd probably have 6 to 8 beers every weekend on a Friday and Saturday. But my buddies were doing it for the same, so I thought, whatever. And at this point in my life, I don't think I was trying to escape something. And it wasn't until senior year when I started drinking for another reason, and I knew I had another reason. It was not to have the lubricated interaction with the girl you like. It was not to have fun and dance and let your inhibitions down. There was a shift at the end of junior year, specifically that summer, where my buddies would be laughing and dancing, and I would just be drinking to drink. Still at the parties, I'd only drink on the weekends. I stuck to that rule. But you could tell that I was doing it for another reason. And that goes through junior year, that junior to senior year summer. I was probably drinking a little more and drinking with less intention of drinking. I feel like I was just drinking to drink.
When that kind of shift happened and you had that realization, was it more difficult for you to not drink during the week? Or were you like longing for the weekend throughout the week?
Definitely Monday, Tuesday roll around. I remember it was Tuesday and Wednesday. I'd be like, God, I wish it was Saturday or Friday.
Yeah.
But that never happened before. And that was a very scary thought to have of like, because sophomore year, I never thought like, oh, I wish it's Saturday. I would just drink on Saturday because that was the day everyone drank. But it became a shift of it was Tuesday, and I'm not craving the weekend anymore. Every kid in high school craves the weekend.
Yeah.
It's the best part of the week. But I wasn't craving the free time. I was craving the ability to drink.
Yeah.
But I did stick by my rule and only did it on the weekend. So at this time, my parents noticing I'm a little bit different, I'm changing a little bit, I hop on Wellbutrin. Do not drink on the Wellbutrin is what the doctor tells me. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got
Who are you talking to? I'm a doctor.
I'm a doctor.
Like, have you seen my medical degree? Okay, buddy.
Head of pediatrics.
I'm the head of pediatrics. I
You're
think I know something about childhood development, pal. And so I go on Wellbutrin. So now I'm drinking probably 12, 14 beers, and I'm taking Wellbutrin every morning. And that would make me very tired. The antidepressant, which is what Wellbutrin is, combined with drinking made me very, very tired, and it would essentially make me black out a lot faster. So
Was that the first medication that you were on for any type of mental health stuff?
in middle school and early high school, I was on Ritalin
Okay.
for ADHD. I don't think I have ADHD, but I think I was just kind of a spaz of a kid, and that's kind of what they did.
Yeah.
And so I was on that. So I had a bunch of Ritalin, spoiler,
Yeah.
stored up in the medicine cabinet. That'll come back later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was drinking on this Wellbutrin, and I essentially black out every weekend, even if I wasn't drinking that much. It's actually, so eventually, spoiler, I end up going to residential treatment at Hopeway, which is a facility here in Charlotte, and we'll get to that story later. But I learned from a psychiatrist there that when you're drinking that heavily, your blackout essentially switch is triggered faster because your brain knows you're going to be drinking. If you're at 8, your brain knows you're going to get to 12 anyway, so you black out at 8 instead, which I never knew. And Wellbutrin accelerated that process, essentially. And drinking on Wellbutrin, this takes me through the end of junior year to senior year summer. So this is like last August. It's like not that far.
I know. Did the progression of your drinking have any effect on your academics?
It did, definitely. Freshman, sophomore year, I had all A's. I was a good student. I had my planner. I remember I was very proud of my planner.
Was it papyrus? Like your
It was not
first edition
papyrus.
Bible?
You were in medical school.
I was in medical school. I had to treat these academics seriously. I mean, I had to prove to someone that I'm the head of pediatrics. And then junior year, my grades just gone. I had a very heavy. I set myself up essentially for disaster because I took all the hardest classes, and then decided that I shouldn't try for whatever reason. I think it came out of perfectionism. Of if I don't try at this, I cannot fail. I essentially sacrificed how smart I could actually be for how smart I was in my head. And I think I struggled with that for a really long time. So, Wellbutrin, blacking out. At this time, I've been dating my best friend in the whole wide world for a year and a half. And I break up with her at the end of August of last year. And
So grades are falling.
right,
You quit sports.
yeah,
Forgot about that. And now you broke up with your best friend.
right,
Okay. Seeing a pattern.
yeah.
Right.
So she's the best girl in the world. I ruined that in the worst way you can possibly imagine. And that takes us to Labor Day of last Labor Day. I remember I went to bed, or I was trying to go to bed, and I stared at the ceiling, and I was trying to, you know how there's little indentations on the ceiling, like in any wall, there's just, you can see the indentations of the paint, essentially.
Yeah.
I was trying to count each individual dot of paint on this wall in a very specific pattern. I said I have to do it in 12 streaks. This is going to make no sense, but that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I have to count it in 12, skip every 7, subtract 4 from that. And whatever number I land on, I have to multiply that by 2. And then I go to the grid of the wall and start counting there at whatever number it is.
Got it.
Did you
Makes
just
sense.
did you just
Exactly.
reenact that like off the top of your head, or were those the actual numbers and you remember them now?
Those were the actual
That's
numbers.
That was the pattern.
'Cause that's what I did for
Yeah,
every.
yeah.
I mean, I just blank out and do this wild arithmetic that made 0 sense on this grid that I imagined.
But it did
in my
to
head.
you.
It made complete sense. It was who I was. It was
the
my
only
It was my identity.
sense.
Was I have to count, or else some disaster will happen, and I am worthless if I do not do this counting.
Got it.
So I do it all night. From whenever I was trying to hit the hay at around 11, I remember hearing the birds in the morning, and I'm essentially paralyzed in my bed. I get up, go through my day. I'm gambling a lot at this point. My gambling has progressed past the Thursday night, Sunday night football. Now I'm on Ukrainian women's tennis at 8 in the morning.
Well, it's an exciting sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Who's the best Ukrainian tennis player?
cannot tell you. I mean, I was doing like 3-on-3 Russian basketball.
Yeah.
Like, it was, when you're at that point,
Yeah.
here you go. And essentially that pattern stays, and I'm speeding while I'm live betting this. So I have my live betting website, and I'm watching the live stream of this tennis or basketball, whatever, and I'm speeding down the road at 90 miles an hour on Providence Road. Yeah. And I made extremely regrettable decisions that I won't dive into during that weekend. And I didn't sleep the entire time. That's when the paranoia really set in. When I was driving, I'd kind of look over my back shoulder and think, someone has to be following me. I remember it was a Dodge Challenger that followed me for like 2 minutes, and I was like, they're on me. They got me. I didn't do the counting that one night. This is it. And
this kind of thinking, this kind of obsessiveness, call it OCD-ish type behavior or thinking, started then. This was kind of one of the first bouts with it, that Labor Day.
I think it was always there, and I did a great job of ignoring it, essentially. Okay. But this was the first time it came to the surface when I could not ignore it.
Yeah, loud.
And it's like, it got so loud that I could not mute it anymore.
Okay.
And at the end, so this is Labor Day, and we had Monday off. So Monday night, my buddies sit me down. They say, we're coming over. And I was like, coming over to my house? What? I have to invite you.
Yeah.
So they come over, and we're all sitting by the fire. My best friend in the whole wide world goes, William, you're not yourself. Something's wrong. And in my head, I accepted it. Or not in my head. On the outside, I accepted it and was like, all right, thanks, guys. Thanks for looking out for me. In my head, I'm giving these 5 guys 2 middle fingers. Yeah. I'm like, are you kidding me? I know me better than you know me, and for you to pretend that you know Dr. Burleson better than he knows himself is a ridiculous statement. So I go and I slam my door. I don't sleep that entire night. School on Tuesday morning. And during this time period, this was the first weekend I did not drink, was the Labor Day weekend. I did not drink at all.
Why?
I don't know. I didn't need to. I already felt on top of the world.
Yeah. Got it.
I felt like I think the reason which essentially the intervention didn't work is because I was perfect, right?
Yeah,
like,
you're feeling it.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah. And so I go to school without having slept in 72 hours plus, and on the way to school, I pull over 3 or 4 times, making sure people aren't following me. And during first period after Labor Day, my feet are on fire. I'm wearing these tight tennis shoes, and my feet are on fire. They feel like they're in a prison and they cannot get out, and my feet need to escape this constraint. I know. So I go through the day. I've been told now that apparently I just looked like a zombie for most of the fall of this year. And I go through the day, and I don't pay attention in class. I'm gambling in class. I am doing everything wrong, essentially. So I go home, go in my closet, and find these pair of slippers. So I put on the slippers and decide I'm never wearing shoelaces again. I can't. It's impossible. My feet will feel like they're on fire again. It would be impossible for me to function and walk with laces around my shoes ever. So I throw on these slippers, and then I made this huge joke about it at school. I'm like, every day's pajama day. But in my head, there was this mental torment of if I wear laces, I will die. Yeah. It was the same essentially feeling of that I need to count. It was the same feeling of I cannot wear laces. So the slippers are essentially part of my personality at this point. I'm still gambling. I'm still back to drinking. I'm drinking way more on the weekends. Still essentially blacking out every weekend, and I'm still taking this Wellbutrin. I'm skipping it if I want to. Some mornings I don't take it. Some morning I take 2 to counteract me not taking it the day before. Don't do that.
Dr. Burleson.
No prescriptions.
Who knows better?
So I have these slippers. I have this paranoia. At this point, okay, I need something to take the edge off. I need something to chill me out in the morning. So I go and I buy 5 packs of cigarettes. I remember I thought it was interesting how I would imagine the first time someone smokes a cigarette, it is someone has one and they're offered one and they smoke one and then go and buy their own pack. But I had never had a cigarette before. And I was like, I'm going to go buy 5
all in
American Spirit.
Like your betting habits.
Yeah, exactly.
All in.
All in. I'm going to go 5 American Spirit black package, and I'm going to cut the filters off because that makes sense.
God.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, it was heavy. So now I'm smoking these on the way to school. I remember on a good day, I could get 3 cigarettes in. Good being relative here. I'd get 3 cigarettes in, and then I'd roll the windows down. And at this point, it's winter, so I'm like shivering, and my bones hurt, and everything hurts. And I'm on the side of the road watching these Dodge Challengers go by. And at this point, all of the cars were Dodge Challengers, which was terrifying. Like, they were all this essentially what felt like a secret agency coming after me.
All black.
Very real, very real. Around this time, I wrote my first suicide note. And that comes out of, there's no possible way I could live like this. I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to hurt anyone else. I just really wanted to stop hurting. I wrote the suicide note, and I decided, have these twin sisters, Caroline and Emily, best part of my entire life. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I put the note in my bedside table, go to bed. Keep doing slippers. I have intramural basketball games at this point every Wednesday when they forced me to wear basketball shoes. So I'd be in my car, and these games were every Wednesday night, and it was 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. And I'd get there at 6 p.m. before the game, and I'd have to listen to spa music and try to convince myself that I should wear these basketball shoes. And I'd keep my slippers on until about 6:58, and then I'd do one last burst of emotion of whatever I could do left, and I'd put on the basketball shoes, and before I could even have them in my car, I would sprint and go to the jump ball. Like, I'd run in as the buzzer was about to go, and I'd play. Our team won the intramural championship, by the way.
Of course it did.
And I go, and the game's over, and I run back into my car, and when no one can see me, I throw off my shoes and toss them in the trunk. I don't even want to see these things. I want to pretend that laces do not exist. And that keeps going for a few weeks. It was just this pattern of drink on the weekends, avoid the laces, smoke your cigarettes with no filters on them.
Your boys did, call it an intervention, but a sit down and try to help you become a little more aware that this behavior is looking a little odd.
Yeah.
And so it continued, right?
Yeah,
did your
worse.
buddies just continue to kind of show concern, or did they just kind of say, what do we do about this, or what was it like?
So my friends never gave up on me. However, there was a certain point where it was definitely out of their control. And I think one of my best buddies said, we want to help you, but you really have to help yourself.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to help myself. So they were still voicing concern. I would go to parties and drink too much and pass out on the bathroom floor. And, my buddies were the one who would carry me home.
Give me like a time frame reference here in terms of kind of the first time that you really started having these kind of obsessive thoughts to where we're at right now in the story about like you know, doing the jump ball. Did this happen in is this like a month period of time, or is this like 6 months?
So this would be Labor Day to October, November.
So it's just a couple months.
First semester, senior year.
So this
First
is like
semester
quick.
last-
I mean,
this
this
is
is like a okay.
This is quick. This is downward spiraling, essentially what it is.
Yeah.
So this pattern repeats itself, and then late November, I write my second suicide note, and this is the one, right? I'm like, okay, this is the one that I'm actually going to act on. This is going to be the note that people read and get all sad about. Obviously, wasn't thinking like that. But I was in the middle of it, and this is very sad. I was in the middle of writing a little note to my mom in it, and the pen ran out of ink. The Sharpie that I've had forever, there was a new Sharpie, and it stopped writing. And I remember I was pissed. I was like, gotta go get a new Sharpie. And I stopped myself. Well, that's gotta mean something.
Yeah.
The pen runs out of ink. Whatever you believe in, that means something. So I decided to go to bed and try to fight on.
Wow. Hey, so the suicide notes, obviously that implies some depressive kind of thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
The way that you were describing it before, it's there's some obsessive, there's some OCD, there's drinking, there's passing out, but obviously you're not very happy about this.
Right.
Can you shed a little light on that?
So it was this pattern of I'd have about 4 or 5 days every month or so where I wouldn't sleep, and I'd be on top of the world, and I did not want to kill myself at all. I thought, I'm going to change the world. I have this whole thing figured out. And then it would crash, and I'd go through these depressive states, and this is where the suicide notes would come, or when I was not in this hyper sense.
How long would the depressive states last?
2-3 weeks.
Really?
And I started craving these highs, right? I would stop taking my Wellbutrin because I figured if I go off that, maybe it'll spark this other energy that I have. Maybe the Wellbutrin is keeping me from being happy. That's where my rationale was at the time.
Dr. Burleson.
I know. I mean, I got this, guys. And so this goes, and I'm just trudging through school, like in a negative way. I get up, I smoke my cigs, I go to school, I don't really talk to anybody. Except at lunch, I act totally normal because I'm worried that people are going to be concerned. I'm terrified that more people are going to think something's wrong. Because right now it's only my close friends. And we can deal with keeping them trying to manage that. But if other people find out that I'm struggling, then it's going to get real bad. In my head, I didn't want to be found out. It was almost like I didn't want to be exposed for being suicidal. So I'd put on the charm, I'd act nice, I'd be friendly. And then during class I'd count the wall. I'd look out the window, I'd try to count the leaves with the same pattern. And eventually, I just could not do it anymore. I remember, so this takes us to a Friday night party. I invited a ton of girls to this party that they all think they're like talking to me, which they were, but they didn't know about each other. I was craving disaster is what I was doing. I didn't care where I got action in a very like something happening to me. It didn't have to be negative, it didn't have to be positive. It was almost like an attention thing, and I didn't care if it was negative, right?
Yeah.
So I created this hellfire essentially. And that night, I'm getting yelled at, and it's this huge thing. And I get a ride home. And for a school project, I was doing a project on Cobain, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And I had Cobain's suicide note printed out for this school project. And in this twisted way, I was reading it, and I had had a few beers that night. And I was reading it, and I thought, what if he did it, maybe I can do it. Like, that was my rationale. It was like, if he did it, then I can do it. So I go out, I get a new Sharpie. This is around midnight of December 12th. And I go out, I get a Sharpie, I draft this note. I forgot a crucial part of the story. A week before that, I knew I was going to die in that week time frame, from the December 12th to whatever, that week. And the week before I went out, it was very premeditated. And I went on the highway, and I was scouting out pillars to crash into. What would be a pillar that people would find me, but no one that I would see? Because I don't want anyone that I knew to find me. Like, that was my nightmare of, like, what if someone that loves me and cares for me finds me? That was my worst nightmare. So I thought I need to get a certain distance away from Charlotte to crash my car into a pillar. And I found a pillar, and I knew that was the one. And I drove past it a few times. I was doing violent U-turns trying to see this pillar. Something about seeing it, it was like seeing my death. And it was very comforting. And Friedrich Nietzsche said, suicide is a great means. It gets many through a dark night. And it was this thing, suicide was essentially my only reason for living, because I had a cop-out at all times, right? I don't have to worry about school. I don't have to worry about drinking too much. I don't have to worry about hurting anybody.
Because I'm going to die.
I'm going to die. Who cares? Whatever I do.
Yeah.
Suicide essentially gave me an excuse to do whatever I wanted. And I would drive past the pillar and just see my own death, and it was very comforting in a very terrifying way. Like, finally, I have my escape ticket. Finally, I can die. So I have my pillar planned out, and a week later, I decide, okay, this is the night. After this party, everything destructed. This should be the night I do it. I know I'm going to do it eventually in the next week. And I go, and we had an alarm system, so I need away at the house. I finish this note, which I still have, and I'm going to jump out the window, essentially. And I'm on the second floor. I'm going to break my legs, but I don't care. I mean, I'm going to die anyway, right? And I open the window, and the December 12th breeze comes in the room, take a few deep breaths, and I see the damn slippers. And the slippers are in my closet, and I just tossed them off coming over from the party because, of course, I wore the slippers to the party.
Yeah.
And I see the slippers, and this thing that embodies essentially all of my problems were these slippers, because the laces were one of the first signs of essentially my downward spiral. And I saw the slippers, and I wish there was some shining beam of light or something to tell me to live, but there wasn't, except the damn slippers. So I take the slippers, and without really thinking, I put them on, and I go to the window, open it up a little bit more, and I turn around. And I took a few strides to my parents' room, and I open the door, and they're asleep. I go, Mom, Dad. I go, what's wrong? What's wrong? This is like a kid had a bad dream. Like, they think this is what it is. I'll never forget it. I want nothing more than to kill myself, is what I said. And that's all I craved, essentially. And my dad and my mom ran up, and they hugged me and said, it's going to be okay. It's going to get help. And something to note here was there was no way on earth I would have asked for help if it was not for my mom. My mom made an environment where it was okay to ask for help always. And later that I've dealt through it now, but I almost had some guilt. Why didn't I ask for help sooner? I could have gotten this fixed before I was about to jump out the window.
Well, took what it took.
But my mom cultivated an environment where it was truly okay, welcoming, and encouraged to ask for help if you're struggling. Huge. Such a blessing. Best mom in the world. And so she hugs me. We go in my dad's office, and they call a friend who knows about this stuff. And I'm begging at this point. I'm crying on my mom's lap. Mom, I want to die. Mom, I want to die. Mom, I want to die. I'm begging her to make it stop. It was essentially hearing voices at this time telling me I need to die. Then the I need to die rhetoric changed from get me help, get me help, get me help. And I don't know where it changed in my brain, but eventually I stopped begging to die and started begging for help. And I think choosing the slippers was the first hint of that, of maybe there's a part of me that wants to live, and there's a part of me down here somewhere that wants to survive.
It's probably your mom.
It was my mom.
Yeah.
And they take me to the emergency room. I remember my dad's seat warmer was broken, so it got too hot. The seat warmer did. So I maxed the voltage on the seat warmer and let it essentially burn my back on the way to the ER. Because if I could feel the pain, I could still be connected to this reality.
Keep you alive.
Right. So I go to the ER, and I walk through the metal detectors. And the ER is very heavily guarded, which is really interesting. Something I never expected. There are cops everywhere.
Yeah.
And I walk through, and right behind me comes a guy who's missing a thumb. And I look back, why the hell am I here? It doesn't make sense to me. This guy's missing a thumb, and I'm walking through the same door he did. And I go, and my dad's doing all that. My dad took me to the ER, and my dad's doing all the talking. I don't really remember what he said, but eventually I'm ushered over to this vitals machine. I'll never forget. They strap the strap on my arm and the thing on my finger, and they go, amazing vitals. And I remember being like, are you kidding me? Amazing vitals?
You know I want to
I
die.
was like, do you know I want to die? And I remember being annoyed with the nurse saying I had perfect vitals. And I get ushered back to this new waiting room. On the other side, my personality liked being, oh, I have perfect vitals.
Like, oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I do. You're looking at the intramural basketball champion. Like, it's like, oh, all right. And so they asked me, do you smoke at all? Like, do you need nicotine while you're here? And I'm like, no, I have perfect vitals. I was smoking a pack a day at this point. Like, but I refused to admit that to myself because it felt like the part of me that wanted to kill himself was the same part of me that smoked cigarettes.
Yeah.
And the part of me that was speaking then was not that part of me.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not that guy. I don't smoke cigarettes because I was, at that point, I wanted to live at least a little bit.
Yep.
And that fluctuated at the time. Sometimes I want to live, sometimes I want to die. I had thoughts of breaking out of the ER, and I remember being mad there was so much security. It's like, you should be able to leave this place if you really want to, but I couldn't. And we go, and I'm in trauma station 1, they put me, and they give me these dark green scrubs.
What ER were you at? Were you at Atrium downtown?
Yeah, it was where I was born. And we go, and this man gives me a pair of green scrubs, dark green scrubs. And I go in the bathroom, and there was glass, and there was a mirror in the bathroom. And I thought about shattering it and doing something with these shards of glass, and it was a shatterproof mirror. I was very upset that it was impossible for me to hurt myself. And that was the point of this whole process. Once you ask for help, it will become very quickly impossible to hurt yourself. And as scary as some of this process was, it limited me from doing any harm to myself.
Crucial.
Yeah.
And I go in, I change in these dark green scrubs, and I come out, and all the doctors are kind of looking at me. And what I found out later was the dark green scrubs are reserved for the psychiatric patients. So now I have these dark green scrubs on. I get to keep my slippers because they looked at my shoes and said, oh, you don't have laces, because you can't have laces in these types of places.
Yeah.
You hurt yourself with the laces. Side note, it's interesting to me, every rule that I share of you can't have laces, it's a shatterproof mirror, all this stuff that's going to come, there's a story behind that. They had to make that rule for someone.
Right,
somebody. Which I think is a really powerful thing to think about.
Yeah.
And I go back to my chair, and the psychiatrist is on a Zoom call. And he goes, hi, what's your name? I give him a little rundown, and I tell him what's going on, and I mitigate it tremendously. I've been a little sad lately. He's like, why are you in the green scrubs then, buddy? Like, a little sad people are not in the green
I'm
scrubs.
just trying to buy some beer, man. Leave me alone.
I was like, chose the wrong color. And I remember he said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. That's what the doctor was saying. And he finally said, but I have to. Have to do what? We have to send you somewhere involuntarily. So at this point, once he said the word involuntarily, that it's out of my hands. I can now not leave if I want to.
Yep.
He tells me the car ride to, which now I'm learning I'm going to Davidson Behavioral Center, is going to be here in 2 nights, and you're going to spend the night in the ER until the driver comes to pick you up. And essentially, I'm in the ER. I am tracked on my fantasy football team. It's about to be the playoffs. It's so interesting how the suicidal brain can prioritize things that at its base are very artificial. But in my brain, this fantasy football to win the little jackpot of the winner was like the biggest deal. It was like, if I don't do anything with this life, I got to win fantasy football. It was all I had left.
It's addiction, baby.
It was all I had left. And I'm watching the football the whole time in the ER. And at some point, my mindset shifts back to, okay, I want to die. I don't like this. The ER is not fun, obviously. So now I'm back to this essentially suicidal brain. And at this point, I think my dad can tell, because you can tell he's grateful that I'm going to Davidson Behavioral Center, right? He's like, that doctor, as much as he didn't want to, made the right decision.
That was a crucial.
It was
moment.
vital, and it's
That
literal
he
meaning.
he made that call. Have you been in touch with him? Do you remember?
On the doctor on the Zoom?
Yeah.
No, it was a 5-minute call, and then, I mean, he looked like he had this slick back hair and a beard and glasses, and he looked like he'd seen 1,000 patients that night. I mean, it was 3 a.m. at that point.
Yeah.
So I spend the rest of the time in the ER. I don't eat a thing, and eventually the driver comes, and the nurse takes my vitals one last time, and she says again, oh, good. Again, this whole thing, I wrote this, I wish there was a mental vital machine, right? Because my numbers would break the damn machine.
They weren't so good.
But they, And I go to this driver, and we go down in this SUV, and before there's this waiting station, and I find out I'm not going to be the only one in this car. It's going to be me and another patient. And we'll name him Johnny for all intents and purposes.
Your new best friend.
My new homie.
Yeah.
And Johnny's this old man, and he's very scrawny, and he's sitting and he's just staring at the wall. And for the first time, I mean, it was a very textbook picture of the guy in the dark green scrubs staring, drooling at the wall. Like, to be blunt, that's what it was. And if you asked me a few years ago if I saw that, it might have freaked me out a little bit. It would freak out some people. Like, to see people, like, the psych ward vibe is not a little scary.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I remember my shoulders dropped. Finally, someone else is looking at the wall. I was like, me and Johnny.
It's my people.
Like, I was like, me and Johnny are the, like, finally someone else is doing what
Somebody
I'm doing.
gets it.
Like, Johnny's counting the wall the same way I am. And that relieved this weird pressure, which comes back as the story will progress, is the patience. As amazing as my therapists and doctors were, it was the patience that taught me the most throughout this whole process. And that was the first idea of that, was Johnny staring at the wall. And I remember my dad was like, you know, when you're walking on the street and you maybe see a homeless person, and when you're a little kid, you might stare, and your dad's like, don't stare at that guy. Yeah. I think my dad was trying to message that to me, like, don't stare at this guy. And I was like, Dad,
no,
I was like, Dad, this is the one person I could relate to in the past few months.
Yep.
And we get in the car, and there's blaring R&B music. Like, this driver has, like, disco funk, like, in the car. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, what is going on? And there's this huge plexiglass divider in between me and Johnny. And there's plastic seats. And I forgot to buckle my seatbelt because the past few months I never buckled my seatbelt. I managed to turn off the sensor in my car that does the ding, ding, ding if you don't buckle
How
your
did you do
seatbelt.
that? No.
I managed to turn it off because I was crossing my fingers maybe I'd get hit by a semi-truck and my death could at least look accidental.
Oh, God.
And I forgot to buckle my seatbelt, and the driver whips around and is like, buckle your seatbelt. And it felt weird, I remember, to buckle my seatbelt. I was like, are we taking safety precautions now in vehicles? When my whole suicide plan was to run into something. So we go, and about in the middle of the car ride, the driver goes, all right, we need to get gas.
Oh, God.
Which is really a punchline if you think about it. And telling the story, it has to be, the points of it have to be funny because it's the only way to digest the intense parts of it.
Of course. And just, we joke and we
Yeah,
laugh
yes,
on
please
here.
do.
And,
Yes.
and that is in no way us being insensitive.
Well,
Obviously,
him
It's-
stopping for gas is hilarious. Like,
Right.
the transport vehicle to the psych ward should be
Yeah,
fully
you-
gassed up and ready to go.
Yeah, about a little preparation.
Are you
pal.
kidding? Like, I was like, you have to stop for gas? And my dad is falling behind us at this point.
Oh God, I bet he was freaking out.
And this driver drove very fast. Like, very fast.
It's like, what is he doing?
And he stops for gas, and I remember my dad was behind us, like, as he was getting gas. And my dad's car shifted into a Dodge Challenger.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He's back. I look in the mirror. I'm like, oh my God, they're back. They're going to get me before I get to the safe place. And at that point of sheer panic, while I'm getting gas on the way to the psych ward, Johnny, who's been singing to the R&B music the whole time.
Big fan.
This wasn't his first rodeo.
Big fan of Johnny.
Funny you say that.
Yeah.
It was not Johnny's first rodeo, and you find out later why.
All right.
And Johnny, who's been singing and dancing and bashing his head actually against the plexiglass, as soon as the driver gets out of the vehicle, he stops and he sits still. And he puts his palm, and it was a palm of like a true working man, you know, it had that like, and he put his palm up against the glass and said, William, pray with me. And Johnny said a prayer in the December 12th night as we were getting gas on the way to Davidson Behavioral Center. And one of the lines he said, he goes, let God guide Will and I to salvation. Wow, Johnny. And the driver gets back in the car, turns on the music. Johnny goes back to his regularly scheduled behavior. And we go to the psych ward. And so this building, it was at night. This was very late at night. And it looks like a haunted house at night.
Like a psych ward.
Preface, it does not in daylight. It looks like a Hampton Inn in daylight. But it looks like Dracula's castle at night. So you have this like poorly lit sign that's like Davidson Behavioral Center with lights
Flickering.
coming around.
Flickering
I was
light.
like, I probably imagined some cobwebs on it too.
It's like a letter
I was
out.
like, yeah, I was like, yes. And we go, and the front entrance is this very intricate, nice porte-cochere. Okay, I'll go to the porte-cochere. We're driving on this road, and there's pine trees everywhere, and I'm looking at the pine trees for whatever reason. It's the only way I can distract myself from what the hell is actually going on. And we're driving down this road, and right when we're about to get to the porte-cochere, we veer off to the side road. And Johnny hits his head on the thing again. And in the distance, down the road, I see this garage door opening. Very, like, imagine a creepy garage door opening. That's what it was. And this fluorescent, this doesn't make any sense, but a very clinical light, that, like, white light of the dentist office.
So healing.
Yes, very healing. It's very comforting. Is shining into the December 12th night sky. And we pull in this thing. And the first guy I see, he was in a hazmat suit. COVID precaution. And this guy had a full, it was just from the waist up, but he had this huge gear of this hazmat suit. And he opens my car door and asks for my name. I tell him, Johnny, good to see you again. He said that. And he goes, all right, Burleson to 2,000, Johnny to 3,000. Talking about floors. And an army of nurses walks us through this hallway that's lined with decorative art, all the good stuff, and we go up the elevator. And I remember in the elevator, it was Johnny and I and a few nurses, please let this crash into the ground. If there's one time an elevator crashes in the ground, it is now.
It's my last chance.
Yeah, I want it to go through the first floor. I want it to go to the dungeon. I want it to go through everything and hit the ground and have this flame of salvation. Because in my mind, that's what Johnny was talking about. In this weird way, I thought salvation meant death. Now I know that's not what he meant. And we go, and I eventually find my room 219. And at this point, I'm saying to Hazmat, which is what I call him, where's my dad? Where's my dad? When do I get to see my dad? This guy Hazmat just puts me off. And
He's like, I'm your dad now.
Hazmat's like, don't worry about that.
You're looking at it.
So Hazmat's like, talk to your hall nurse about it. And at some point, as I was walking to my room, I realized I'm not seeing my dad for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I go in my room, and there's a pair of tan scrubs, like the crust of a peanut butter jelly and sandwich. That's how I remember looking at them. It was that color. And I put them on. They were baggy and thin, and they were very uncomfortable. And I had a little basket of toiletries in room 219. And there was a steel bed that was bolted to the floor, and there was a steel desk that was bolted to the floor, and I had a little chair. And I go, and I'm start examining my Christmas presents of my toiletries. The first thing I see was a toothbrush, and it was about 2 inches, and it had a rounded handle, and it was the size of your pinky, and that was the toothbrush. And I remember thinking, as I said, there's a rule for that toothbrush.
Yeah. There's a reason.
There's a reason for that toothbrush. And at that point, I felt very defeated. I thought, if they thought of the damn toothbrush, they have thought of everything. Like, if they're going down to that means of making the patient safe, then there's no way I can hurt myself. And there truly was not. And at that time, that was a terrifying thought of, I literally cannot hurt myself in here, which was the point of the whole thing. So my suicidal ideation kind of takes a break because I realize it's impossible. But it transforms itself into, okay, I'm going to die as soon as I get out of here, as soon as I find a way out. But here I'm safe, and I know that. And it's a difficult thing to digest, but you are safe in these types of places. And I go, and I look in the mirror, shatterproof mirror. I remember seeing that. I was also upset. And I look at myself, I looked in my eyes. I had these bags under my eyes. And I just start crying. And it wasn't like a Will Ferrell funny cry in a movie. This is like a real cry. And I get on the bathroom floor, and I sob for about 10 minutes in Davidson Behavioral Center in room 219. I'm on the ground, and it was a silent cry. One of those, when you don't even have enough emotion to produce sounds. That's how empty I was. I thought, okay. The nurse comes to my door to check on me. He goes, okay, let's go find you something. Let's go to the common room. So the common room is a bunch of steel, essentially metal chairs, and there's a TV in the common room. You're like, okay, we're going to watch TV right now. I did not want to watch TV. It was Justin Fields, his rookie debut. No one wants to watch that, even when you're in Davidson.
Especially when you can't bet on it.
Yeah, I couldn't. Well, another thing, watching sports when you don't have action, once you've been betting every single sports game I've watched, I was like, why do I care about how far this dude can throw the ball? So what, he can scramble. And so I go to get water, which is this big steel machine with a little button. And to the left of that is a bookshelf. And on top of the bookshelf it was out of a movie. It's like the dust-ridden pages, or
The secret book.
this one of these.
Yeah.
It was like this. It was like this secret book that was like, what's that? And it caught my eye. So I like reach up my arms and get it. And there were other patients in there. Back 2 seconds. When I walked in, there was an older patient in a wheelchair. And she said, "Welcome to the house of pain." Okay.
It's comforting.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
I was like, tip of the cap. And I go and I grab this book, and it's Lonesome Dove by Larry McCurdy. Big book, about 1,000 pages. And I go back to my room. I'm holding this like it's everything I have left. I don't even know what it is. I didn't even have time to read the back cover. I just knew this was something
Special.
It was special, and it was. And I go back to my room and I read this book essentially the rest of the night until I have my meeting with the psychiatrist at Davidson Behavioral Center who's trying to figure out what's going on. And this is the morning. I skip breakfast. I didn't want to go to breakfast. And I eventually have my meeting around probably 10 a.m. But
Were you up the whole night?
Yeah. But you get your vitals taken at 6:30. Yeah.
Your beautiful vitals.
Yeah. And so I hear this vital screaming, and it interrupts my reading, and I remember being rather mad. Like, what's the deal, guys? So I get my vitals taken, and the girl behind me has this bright blue hair. And she has, this is dark, but she has cuts all up and down her arms and down her legs. She has tattoos trying to cover up the scars, but she never could. And we'll call her Blue. That's what I call her in the story. And I realized she was the room next to me when we went back to our rooms after we got our vitals. And that night I heard someone crying the whole night as I was reading. And I realized it was Blue crying the whole night. And she comes up later. But I go and I have my meeting with a psychiatrist, and I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. I should not be here. I wanted to escape so I could die, essentially. And I was very convincing in the fact that I was fine. I put on an act like this was a huge misunderstanding, and she bought it. She really did, to an extent. And so I'm essentially reading Lonesome Dove all day, every night. I go to one lunch. I go to outside time where I talk with Blue. I wrote about that in Semicolon a little bit. But eventually on about the second day or the third day, I receive a call from my mom because there's these pay phones. And I call my mom, and she goes, "Okay, there's this place called Hopeway in Charlotte. It's a residential mental health facility. I think you're going to go there." "How long?" "It's going to be like a few days at Hopeway." She goes, "William, I think I'm going to be there for about 30 days, and then we can decide after that." I can't die for 30 days was my initial thought. So I had to stick around for 30 more days. I was upset that it was going to take this long for me to get out, because I was still in a very suicidal state at this point.
Previously, you'd shifted from I want to die to I want help. Were you getting still little pops of I want help?
When I talked to my mom, I would be like, "Okay, I can do it. I can do it.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm safe with my mom. I can live for her. I'm not going to live for myself, but I can live for her."
Okay.
And I go, leave Davidson Behavioral Center. I have a night at home where I have to be closely monitored by my parents, and because I have to get a COVID test before Hopeway. So I have a night at home, and I'm on the porch with my dad, and we smoke cigars because I had nicotine. My dad didn't know I was smoking at all, but I was like, "Want to have one of those cigars?" And we had cigars on the porch, and I went to bed, and my dad slept on my floor to make sure I was safe the whole night. I never tried to unlock the window, but I'm fairly certain the windows and everything were bolted shut.
Sure.
And the next morning, we say our goodbyes, and I'm off to Hopeway. And my first day at Hopeway, I go there, and I get showed my room. I'll fast forward a little bit, and I'm in the shower. And that was the first time I really tried to convince myself that I should live for myself. Not for someone else, I need to live for myself. Okay, what's a number that I can live to that's at least giving it a shot? Okay, 25. I'm going to live to 25, at least. I'm going to live to 25. I can get there. A few weeks later after treatment, okay, I can get to 35. I can get to 35. I said a few weeks, I meant a few days. A few days later, it's 40. I can live to 40. So on and so forth. By the end, I'm saying, all right, I'm going to live to
110.
Yeah, I'm going to live to 110. And I'm not only going to survive until 110, I'm going to live until 110. And that whole progression at Hopeway, which really came from other patients. My first day there, I was very nervous. It felt like I was a new kid at school. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy who was sitting alone. We all sat outside because the weather was fine at that point. It was a little chilly. But he was sitting alone at the picnic table, and I was walking out, like, shaking my hands with my tray. And he goes, come over here, buddy. Come over here, buddy. All right, I sit down, and we have this conversation. Eventually, it lands on the point of, he asked me, so why are you here? I was like, whoa, dude.
Good old rehab question.
Yeah.
I was like,
what you in for?
Yeah, I was like, whoa, there has to be some, like, you don't get to ask me that yet. We got to be friends before you ask me that.
Why you in here?
Yeah. So I tell him, like, yeah, I've been, like, very suicidal. I was in the psych ward before this. Naturally, I'm like, so what about you? And he goes, crystal meth, 20 years. And in my environment, I've been taught to be afraid of people like that. Like, to group them all together is kind of what you do in your mind when you've never seen someone's life affected by drugs. You group them together, and you think they're all bad, right? And this guy just waved me over. And he taught me more than anybody. We'll call him Max. Max taught me more than anybody about life, and he was really the one who convinced me to live, and told me that I could turn it around. And I'm still in touch with him. He's doing well. And we had lunch together every day. At this point, I got my bipolar diagnosis, which, there it is.
Yeah, there's the big reveal.
So looking back to those speeding, gambling, thinking you're on top of the world, those would be the manic tendencies.
Sure.
Depressed would be the depressive tendencies when you want to die. Yeah. And for the first few days at Hopeway, about 3 days after there, I was still depressed. And then about the fourth day, something shifted. I had all this energy. And I decided, whew, I feel pretty good. And I didn't sleep the whole time at Hopeway, or for those 4 days at Hopeway. And then I came all crashing down. And I was a star in therapy. I shared everything because I knew I could get better, and I knew I was on top of the world. And then the depression hit again. And I'm very grateful that I had both stages.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Thank
Yeah.
God you cycled so quickly
Yeah.
so they could see it.
It was a blessing that my brain showcased both of its
Huge
environments at that same time period. Had great therapy, had great psychiatrists there. Like I said, again, most of the stuff I learned was from the patients. And it's difficult to tell stories about the patients without revealing everything about the patients in a meaningful way. But after 30, I think it was 30 days on the dot at Hopeway, I left. And being in a mental hospital in Christmas is interesting. My family stood through the glass door, and I waved at my twin sisters. And they were screaming, "Merry Christmas!" And I could barely hear their faint little high voices through the glass.
God.
I thought, this is just out of a movie. Like, it was like, and everyone was crying, but pretending they weren't crying. And I got out, and a week later, I went back to high school. In between Hopeway and Davidson Behavioral Center, that one night I was home when I got my COVID test. Sorry, I'm going back.
No.
All good.
In between that, we were pulling up the driveway. This is the part I cry.
Don't worry. I've already cried twice.
And
I'm getting there.
And we pull up our driveway, which is really steep. And I'm showing my mom all my favorite songs. Because it's interesting, the suicidal brain still has a base level of interest. And for me, it was music. And I was showing my mom my favorite song, Cyclones by Sticky Fingers, if you want to listen at home. That's the song I showed her. And at the end of the song, he goes, "We're cyclones," and it closes out. And I hadn't cried in months. I just did not cry. It became incapable for me to cry. I could not show emotion because I was so numb to the fact that I even existed. And I look at her, I go, Mom, I need to help people. This has to mean something. This was before I was at Hopeway. And that was the part of me that knew that I was going to live past December and past all the months after that. And yes, I battled through both sides at Hopeway.
Sure.
But having that spark of helping people then before I went to Hopeway is really what led me through the whole time. And she looked at me and started crying and said, "You will, baby, you will." And that was kind of the moment I knew that I was going to stick around.
The information and opinions shared on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and are not a substitute for medical advice. If you feel like you may need professional help, here are some resources. For the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline, call 1-800-662-4357 or visit smsa.gov. For listeners in the Charlotte, North Carolina community, visit dilworthcenter.org or call 704-372-6969 or visit theblanchardinstitute.com or call 704-288-1097.